All right, good morning, sixth graders. I got no one on here this morning that's live, which is kind of sad, but I get it. It's close to summer and everyone wants to kind of start sleeping in and go outside and whatnot. So I won't take it personally. But today we're going to be covering two books that are from Sora. And I'm really excited because one of them is like one of my all-time favorites. And if you are also a fan of historical fiction, it will probably be one of your all-time favorites as well. So the first one I'm going to do, though, is a little bit more relaxed. It's more of those, more for those who like a little bit of sci-fi, who like the Avengers, or Marvel. No, Marvel's is Avengers. I'm trying to think of the other ones. But if you like more of the like superhero type ones, you might be interested in this one here. So this is my one of the newer books. I remember it came out, I believe, last summer. It's called Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I believe they made a movie off of this too. You may have seen it if you are into Marvel. But it says everyone gets mad at hustlers, especially if you're on the victim side of the hustle. And Miles knew hustling was in his veins. Miles Morales is just your average teenager. Dinner every Sunday with his parents, chilling out, playing old school video games with his friend Ganke, Janky. I think it's Ganke. Crushing on brainy, beautiful poet Alicia. He's even got a scholarship spot on the prestigious Brooklyn Visions Academy. Oh, yeah. And he's Spider Man. But lately, Miles' Spidey sense has been on the fritz. With the misunderstanding leads to his suspicion from school, Miles begins to question his abilities. After all, his dad and uncle were Brooklyn Jack boys with criminal records. Maybe kids like Miles aren't meant to be superheroes. Maybe Miles should take his dad's advice and focus on saving himself. As Miles tries to get his school life back on track, he can't shake the vivid nightmares that continue to haunt him. Nor can he avoid the relentless buzz of his spidey sense every day in history class. Amidst his teacher's lectures on the historical benefits of slavery and the importance of modern day prison system. But after his scholarship is threatened, Miles uncovers a chilling plot, one that puts his friends, his neighborhood, and himself at risk. It's time for Miles to suit up. So it sounds like him as Spider-Man, he is having almost like a conflict with society and whether or not he should be Spider-Man still or not. So I'm just going to read a small sample of it. This is, again, mainly for those who like action, those who enjoy the superhero movies or shows or books. This would definitely be up your alley if you have not read it yet. Ooh, that's really cool. Little spider web. Chapter 1. Take a little drink here. My throat's dry. Miles set the good dishes on the table, the white porcelain with the blue detailed glaze over the top, ornate flowers and intricate images of old Chinese villages that nobody in his family had ever been to. Good China, his father called it. So China's like not just the country, but the fact that they have it lowercase is when we talk about like expensive dishware and easily breakable dishware, I should say, too. Passed down from his grandmother only to be used on Sundays and special occasions. And though it was Sunday, today was also a special occasion for Miles, because it was the last day of his punishment. My suggestion to you, Miho, is that you make sure to get it all out before his class. Miles' mother said, lifting a window and fanning the smoke from the stove out with a hand towel. Because I swear, if you get suspended again for something like this, it's gonna be you I'm fanning out the window. Ooh, so he got suspended. That's not good. Miles was suspended for having to pee. Well, for saying he had to pee. Well, that's weird. After his history teacher, Mr. Chamberlain, said no, Miles begged. And once Mr. Chamberlain said no again, Miles left. So he was actually suspended for leaving class. But here's the thing, Miles didn't really have to pee. And no, he didn't have to do that either. Miles had to rescue someone. At least he thought he did. Truth was, his spider sense had been on the fritz lately, but Miles couldn't risk it, couldn't ignore what he considered his responsibility. I don't always have time to pee before class, Ma, Miles replied. He rinsed forks and knives in the sink while his mother hung the towel on the oven handle. She grabbed a pair of the tongs and lifted chunks of the chicken breast from the sizzling grease. Yeah, you used to say that every night, and guess what? You wet the bed more than any boy I've ever seen. The boy could have set a record, Miles' father chimed in from the couch. He was flipping through Friday's Daily Bugle. He only got the Fridays edition. His theory was that if he were to actually read it every day, he'd never leave the house. Creatures everywhere were threatened. Creatures everywhere were threatening civilization, and those were just the articles about reality TV. Miles, I swear you were the most bedwetting kid in Brooklyn. Matter of fact, back then I used to get this trash paper every morning just so we could line the top of your mattress with it in the evening. Mr. Davis closed the paper, folded it in half. He shook his head. And then your pissy butt would come waddling into our bedroom in the middle of the night, smelling like 200-year-old lemonade, talking about, I had an accident. An accident? I'm going to tell you right now, son, be thankful for your mother, because if it were up to me, you would have been lying in your wet spot until it was a dry spot. This dad sounds like a comedian. Oh, it's good. Be quiet, Jeff, Miles' mother said, positioning the chicken on a serving plate. Am I lying, Rio? You were always saving him. Because he's my baby, she said, laying a paper towel on the first layer of meat to sop the grease from the glistening skin. But you're not a baby no more. So figure out what you need to do to keep your butt in that seat. So, for those who are familiar with Spider-Man, his parents, you can see, don't know anything about him being Spider-Man and having superpowers. Miles had already made up his mind that wouldn't be a problem. He was going to stay in his seat in Mr. Chamberlain's class and ignore his beehive brain whenever the bees up there got to buzzing. His spidey sense had always been his alarm, the thing that let him know when there was danger close, or when someone needed help. But since the beginning of this school year, his junior year at Brooklyn Visions Academy, his spidey sense seemed to be broken, almost like his powers were wearing off. He'd been dashing out of Chamberlain's class over and over again for fake bathroom breaks, bolting down the hallway and out the door, a gust of wind, only to find nothing. No monster, no mutant, no madman, just Brooklyn being Brooklyn, left with a new awkward excuse about what took him so long in the bathroom. So it makes me wonder if maybe his spidey senses aren't off and that it's just someone in Mr. Chamberlain's history class that is a no-gooder. Which makes me kind of be a little bit suspicious of the Mr. Chamberlain teacher, because maybe he is the one that is a bad guy and actually does bad things off when he's not teaching. All right, I'll do 5 more minutes of this book, and then I'll move on to my one all-time favorites that I've read. But I might have to read this one. This one's kind of fun. Nice and chill. Perhaps for a kid like him, being a superhero had an expiration date, and it wasn't worth being punished by his folks. It wasn't worth failing a class or being expelled. If he couldn't even guarantee he'd still be able to be Spider-Man by graduation. Why not? I wonder why he feels like he can't be Spider-Man by the time graduation comes. The buzzer buzzed just as Miles finished setting the table for 4. So I wonder who the 4th person is. He scooted past his mother, who was scooping yellow rice from a pot into a bowl, and stuck his head out the open window. I don't know why you look to see who it is like you don't already know, Miles' father said, washing his hands in the sink. He kissed Miles' mother loudly on the cheek. Smells good, baby. Matter of fact, it smells so good that our son's knucklehead friend could smell it on the other side of Brooklyn. Be nice. You know he's going through some changes, Miles' mother said. We going through some changes too. Nickels, dimes, and quarters. Oh, yeah. His father's a comedian. That's hilarious. That's like an all-time good dad joke. Miles' father rubbed his thumb and index finger together. Just saying, I love the kid, but we can't really afford another mouth at this table. So if you can see me like rubbing his index finger, I think up in the Midwest, we kind of do more than just the index finger, but it's kind of like this hand gesture we use for like it costs money type of thing. Miles' mother faced his father, placed her hands on his chest and sighed. Love is deed, Papi, not just fine phrases. She planted a kiss on his lips. Yo, Miles, grossed by his parents, yelled down to the stoop. Hold on! On the other side of the room, Miles hit the button that automatically unlocked the front door. Then cracked the one leading into the building. The sound of heavy footfalls climbing the steps. Yo, Ganki said, almost falling into the apartment. Ganki, a burly Korean kid, was Miles' best friend, confidant, and roommate at Brooklyn Visions Academy. He immediately inspected Miles' face, right cheek, left cheek, then whispered, You okay? I'm surprised your folks didn't kill you. Before moving past Miles to greet his parents. Hey, Mrs. M, Mr. Jeff, what's for Din? I'm not sure, Ganki, but guess who would know? Your parents, Miles' father said. Mrs. Morales slapped her husband on the arm. Oh, I know what they're having for dinner, Mr. Jeff. I already ate it. What? Ganki said with a shrug. Ganki, wash your hands and sit down. You know you're always welcome here, even if it's for dinner number 2. Tonight we're having, oh boy, chicharron de pollo. I know pollo's chicken in Spanish, but I don't know what the first one is. Ganki sent a confused look to Miles' father, who stood behind a chair at the head of the table. Fried chicken, he said, his face volleying back and forth between annoyed and sympathetic. Oh, sweet. Not like it would have mattered, Miles' father jabbed, sliding out a chair and taking a seat. Got that right, Mr. Jeff. Miles set the chicken, the rice, and the greens on the table, then took his seat. His mother put big spoons of the rice and greens bowls and tongs into the chicken plate. On the chicken plate. Then she sat down as well. Bless the food, Jeff, Mrs. Morales said. Miles, his father, and Ganki instantly snatched their eager hands back from the bowls and spread them wide to grab hold of the person sitting next to them. Yep, yes, of course. Bow your heads, boys, Miles' father said. Lord, please help our son Miles behave himself in school, because if he doesn't, this very well be the last home-cooked meal he ever has. Amen. Amen, Miles' mother said seriously. Amen, Ganki said. Miles sucked his teeth, shot Ganki a look. Ganki leaned in for the chicken tongs. And that's where we're going to stop. Miles Morales Spider-Man. And move on to a different one. So if you're liking adventure, if you kind of like, I mean, there's a little bit of mystery going on as to why his spidey senses are going off. But that is a book. I might actually have to read that this summer. It's kind of nice. That is Miles Morales Spider-Man. So go back. Now this one is one of my all-time favorites. If you are someone that loves a good historical fiction book, if you have read any Alan Gratz books, you are going to absolutely love this book. This is a little bit of a higher level than Alan Gratz, but it's still an easy read. The chapters are really short and they change perspectives just like Refugee does and some other books. One of the things that I would suggest doing if you do read this book is I had created like a post-it note and I divided it into 4 because it switches between 4 characters' perspectives. And in each box of my post-it note, I put the name and just like little snippets about them to help me remember who is who. Okay, so I'm going to read the synopsis and then I'll start reading this. But again, cannot say how much I love this author. Pretty much love her books more than Alan Gratz. So I don't know if that says anything, but it means a lot to me. So World War II is drawing to a close in East Prussia, and thousands of refugees are on a desperate trek towards freedom, many with something to hide. Among them are Joanna, Amelia, and Florian, whose paths converge en route. So they start separate and they come together. So there are 3 perspectives. They're still separate perspectives, but they actually start at some point traveling together. En route to the ship that promises salvation, which is called the Wilhelm Gustloff, and that is actually historically accurate. Forced by circumstance to unite, the 3 find their strength, courage, and trust in each other tested with each step closer to safety. Just when it seems freedom is within their grasp, tragedy strikes. Not country, nor culture, nor status matter, as all 10,000 people, adults and children alike, aboard, must fight for the same thing: survival. Okay, so I would say that synopsis does not do this justice. So there are 4 characters. They introduce 3. There is a 4th character who is a Nazi character, and you kind of get his perspective of things too. But everyone is heading towards the Wilhelm Gustloff, which is a ship that is trying to help these refugees get to freedom. Now, along the way, there are difficulties of trying to avoid Nazis and other difficulties along the way that would be historically accurate. But really, it's kind of intense because, I mean, I'll ruin this one part. If you don't want to hear this one ruined part, then plug your ears. But it's almost like this World War II meets Titanic, because something happens with the Wilhelm Gustloff ship that kind of, well, it sinks. So that is also something that's historically accurate as well and adds a little bit of a twist to the story. So let's read and not waste any more time. Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. She's got a lot of other books that are really good too. All right. And as you can see, each chapter, it's not numbered, but it actually will say whose perspective it is in. So in the beginning of the book, it's really nice. It gives a little bit of a map overview. So Prussia is more to the east. It is pretty much Russia, a land where Russia's over here, East Prussia is here. It's kind of like some no man's land, if you could say. Some of the characters come from Poland, Lithuania, Germany, so they're all in this area. So if you picture Europe, this is where Europe is, and we've got the Baltic Sea. This is where everyone is trying to head to, and the ship actually will take off and go this way, and it doesn't make it far. Right here is, I don't know if, right here's the Gustloff where it sinks. So I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, here is where it leaves and it goes there. So it doesn't make it too far where it sinks. And if you know anything about World War II, this is where the, what was it called? The U-boat, which is pretty much the creation of the submarine started. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that's how the ship sinks. But, all right, let's get started. Joanna, guilt is a hunter. My conscience mocked me, picking fights like a petulant child. It's all your fault, the voice whispered. I quickened my pace and caught up with our small group. The Germans would march us off the field road if they found us, so we know that they're not supporting the Germans. Roads were reserved for the military. Evacuation orders hadn't been issued, and anyone fleeing East Prussia was branded a deserter. But what did it matter? I became a deserter 4 years ago when I fled from Lithuania. Lithuania. I had left it in 1941. What was happening at home? Were the dreadful things whispered in the streets true? We approached a mound on the side of the road. The small boy in front of me whimpered and pointed. He had joined us 2 days prior, just wandering out on the forest alone, and quietly began following us. Hello, little one. How old are you? I had asked. 6, he replied. 6 years old, a 6-year-old boy wandering out of the woods alone. Who are you traveling with? He paused and dropped his head. My Omi. I turned towards the woods to see if his grandmother had emerged. Where is your Omi now? I asked. The wandering boy looked up at me, his pale eyes wide. She didn't wake up. So the little boy traveled with us, often drifting just slightly ahead or behind, and now he stood, pointing to a flap of dark wool beneath a merengue of snow. I waved the group onward, and when everyone advanced, I ran to the snow-covered heap. So I'm wondering if the grandma froze to death because it seems to be winter right now. The wind lifted a layer of ice flakes, revealing the dead blue face of a woman, probably in her 20s. Her mouth and eyes were hinged open, fixed in fear. I dug through her iced pockets, but they had already been picked. In the lining of her jacket, I found her identification papers. I stuffed them in my coat to pass on to the Red Cross and dragged her body off the road and onto the field. She was dead, frozen solid, but the thought of tanks rolling over her was more than I could bear. I ran back to the road and our group. The wandering boy stood at the center of the path, snow falling all around him. She didn't wake up either? He asked quietly. I shook my head and took his mittened hands in mine. And then we both heard it in the distance. Bang. So these chapters, like I said, are super short. They go quickly, which is really nice. Now we're on to Florian's perspective. Florian is a boy. Joanna is a girl. Fate is a hunter. Engines buzzed in a swarm above. Der Schwarztod, which means the Black Death, they called them. I hid behind the trees. The planes weren't visible, but I felt them, close, trapped by darkness, both ahead and behind. I weighed my options. An explosion detonated and death crept closer, curling around me in fingers of smoke. A lot of figurative language here. I ran. My legs churned, sluggish, disconnected by my racing mind. I willed them to move, but my conscience noosed around my ankles and pulled down hard. You are a talented young man, Florian. That's what my mother had said. You are Prussian. Make your own decisions, son, said my father. Would he have approved of my decisions, of the secrets I had now carried across my back, amidst this war between Hitler and Stalin? Would mother still consider me talented or a criminal? The Soviets would kill me, but how would they torture me first? The Nazis would kill me, but only if they uncover the plan. How long would it remain a secret? The questions propelled me forward, whipping through the cold forest, dodging branches. I clutched my side with one hand, my pistol in the other. The pain surged with each breath and step, releasing warm blood out of the angry wound. So he's hurt. The sound of the engines faded. I had been on the run for days, and my mind felt as weak as my legs. The hunter preyed on the fatigue and weary. I had to rest. The pain slowed me to a jog and finally a walk. Through the dense trees in the forest, I spied branches hiding an old potato cellar. I jumped in. Bang! Third character, Amelia. Shame is a hunter. So far we've got fate for Florian, shame for Amelia, and guilt for Joanna. They each have something that's kind of eating at them. So shame is eating at Amelia. I would rest a moment. I had a moment, didn't I? I slid across the cold, hard earth toward the back of the cave. The ground quivered. Soldiers were close. I had to move, but felt so tired. It was a good idea to put branches over the mouth of the forest cellar, wasn't it? No one could trek this far off the road, would they? I pulled the pink woolen cap down over my ears and tugged my coat closer near my throat. Despite my bundled layers, January's teeth bit sharp. My fingers had lost all feeling. Pieces of my hair froze crisp to my collar, tore as I turned my head. So I thought of August. My eyes dropped closed, and then they opened. A Russian soldier was there. He leaned over me with the light poking my shoulder with his pistol. I wonder if this is Florian that just jumped into that potato cellar, if this is the same cellar. I jumped, frantically pushing myself back. Fräulein? He grinned, pleased that I was alive. Komme, Fräulein, how old are you? 15, I whispered. Please, I'm not German. Nicht Deutsche. He didn't listen. He didn't understand, or didn't care. He pointed his gun at me and yanked at my ankle. Shh, Fräulein. He lodged the gun under the bone of my chin. I pleaded. I put my hands across my stomach and begged. He moved forward. No, this would not happen. I turned my head. Shoot me, soldier, please. Bang. Alfred. This is the Nazi one. Fear is a hunter, so fear is the thing that eats at him. So there's 2 girl characters and 2 boy characters. But brave warriors, we push away fear with the flick of our wrist. We laugh at the face of fear, kick it like a stone across the street. Yes, Hannelore, I compose these letters in my mind first, as I cannot abandon my men as often as I think of you. So notice that he's got some italics here. So this is all what he's thinking in his head. He's not directly talking to anyone. You would be proud of your watchful companion, Sailor, goodness if I could talk, Sailor Alfred Frick. Today, I saved a young woman from falling into the sea. It was nothing really, but She was so grateful she clung to me, not wanting to let go. Thank you, sailor, her warm whisper lingered in my ear. She was quite pretty and smelled like fresh eggs, but there have been many grateful and pretty girls. Oh, do not be concerned. You and your red sweater are foremost in my thoughts. How fondly, how incessantly I think of my Hannelore and red sweater days. I'm relieved you are not here to see this. Your sugared heart could not bear the treacherous circumstances here at the port of Gotenhafen. At this very moment, I am guarding dangerous explosives. I am serving Germany well. Only 17, yet carrying more valor than those twice my years. So Alfred is only 17. And Emilia is 15. That's as much as we know. There is talk of an honor ceremony, but I'm too busy fighting with the fur to accept honors. Honors are for the dead, I've told them. We must fight while we are alive. Yes, Hannelore, I shall prove to all of Germany there is indeed a hero inside of me. Bang! I abandoned my mental letter, and crouched in the supply closet, hoping no one would find me. I did not want to go outside. So is he as brave as he seems? Not really. We're back to Florian. Florian is the one that seems to not have a side. I stood in the forest cellar, my gun fixed on the dead Russian. The back of his head had departed from his skull. I rolled him off of the woman, so it wasn't Florian that first time, but he killed the person that was taunting Emilia. She wasn't a woman. She was a girl in a pink woolen cap, and she had fainted. I scavenged through the Russian's frozen pockets and took cigarettes, a flask, a large sausage wrapped in paper, his gun, and ammunition. He wore 2 watches on his wrist, trophies collected from victims. I didn't touch them. Crouching near the corner of the cellar, I scanned the cold chamber for signs of food, but saw none. I put the ammunition in my pack, careful not to disturb the small box wrapped in a cloth. The willing to die for it, I gnawed at the dried sausage, savoring the saliva it produced. The ground vibrated slightly. This Russian wasn't alone. There would be more. I had to move. I turned to the top of the soldier's flask and raised it to my nose. Vodka. I opened my coat, then my shirt, and poured the alcohol down my side. The intensity of the pain produced a flash in front of my eyes. My ruptured flesh fought back, twisting and pulsing. I took a breath and bit back a yell and tortured the gash with the remainder of the alcohol. So he's trying to clean his wound. The girl stirred in the dirt. Her head snapped away from the dead Russian. Her eyes scanned the gun at my feet and the flask in my hand. She sat up, blinking. Her pink hat slid from her head and fell silently into the dirt. The side of her coat was streaked with blood. She reached into her pocket. I threw down the flask and grabbed the gun. She opened her mouth and spoke. Polish. Emilia. The Russian soldier stared at me, mouth open, eyes empty, dead. What had happened? Crouching in the corner was a young man dressed in civilian clothes. His coat and shirt were unfastened, his skin bloodied and bruised to a deep purple. He held a gun. He was going to shoot me? No, he had killed the Russian. He had saved me. Are you okay? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. His face twisted at the sound of my words. He is German. I was Polish. He wouldn't want nothing to do with me. Adolf Hitler had declared that Polish people were subhuman. We were to be destroyed so the Germans could have the land they needed for their empire. Hitler said Germans were superior and would not live among Poles. We were not Germanizable, but our soil was. I pulled the potato from my pocket and held it out to him. Thank you. The dirt pulsed slightly. How much time had passed? We have to go, I told him. I tried to use my best German. In my head, the sentences were intact, but I wasn't sure they came out that way. Sometimes when I spoke German, people laughed at me, and then I knew my words were wrong. I lowered my arm and saw my sleeve spattered with Russian blood. Would this ever end? Tears stirred inside me. I did not want to cry. The Germans stared at me, combination of fatigue and frustration, but I understood. His eyes on the potato said, Amelia, I'm hungry. The dried blood on his shirt said, Amelia, I'm injured. But the way he clutched his pack told me the most. Amelia, don't touch this. That's where I'm going to stop. I know it's kind of starting a little slow, but we already have 2 characters together. There is something important about that pack that Florian has. And yeah, so really, really, really good book. Cannot praise it enough. It does pick up speed. It is super easy read. But it's one that I would highly recommend. So other than that, it is Friday. You guys have a week and 2 days left of school. And then you guys have summer. Next Friday, we do have material pickup. So make sure you start gathering anything that belongs to the school, textbooks, library books, my books. I'd love to see my books back. I would just cry if I didn't get them back. So make sure you bring everything back to school in a bag, make it easy, and try to label anything that belongs to a certain teacher if you can. But otherwise, I will see you guys on Friday. I'll be there saying bye. And then it'll be summer. But yeah, I'll keep doing these hot reads for you guys. And I hope that you are getting something out of it and finding some good books to read on Sora during summer. So I hope you guys have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions.